Hi, I'm Rachael Smith and this is the Trying Again podcast. If you've joined me now, I recommend going back to the start, to episode 1, to bring you up to date, else this episode might not make any sense. Trying Again is a personal podcast of passion as I explore this usually silent world and decide whether I want to try again after multiple miscarriages. The conversations in this episode will be frank.
I was going through it and I was on Instagram and I just put in #104, #miscarriage, and then I just saw thousands of pages and it just opened up a whole new world.
And they may be difficult, but they are needed.
Although you might not have been very far along, that doesn't actually change how you feel about the pregnancy or the child that you thought you were going to have.
I've spent some time researching this podcast. It was a journey of discovery for me personally. At times, I have to admit, I've felt lonely. And if you're in my shoes, you may feel alone too. And I get that. I felt like I was running on a hamster wheel, on empty. And whilst it was spinning around, someone was just poking me with a stick over and over. Researching for this podcast did help me focus. The more I researched, the more I felt that this was right. Difficult, painful, but the right thing to do. I found experts who educated me. This is an area of life I'd never known I needed to find answers for. I have read other stories, took to Instagram and seen posts from people, all in their own world of grief, but each still open to share. In my case, the stats are a bit bleak. Drilling down into the 1 in 4, which is the estimate for pregnancy loss for women who have suffered a miscarriage, 1 in 5 if you only count those of us who've reported it or knew, there are 1 in 100 women who experience recurrent miscarriage, which is classed as 3 or more miscarriages in a row. I am that 1%. And according to the Tommy's website, in that 1% category, after each miscarriage, your risk of another increases. The cause is unknown in around half of cases of recurrent miscarriage, and if the cause is unknown, 6 out of 10 women who have 3 miscarriages will go on to have a baby. There are other stats from 2018 that say 2,060 babies are born alive, and 515 babies were miscarried, 114 born preterm, and 8 stillborn. Any baby loss at any stage of pregnancy is heartbreaking. But this did make me wonder about miscarriage specifically. Why are we not told about this before? In society, schools, our sex education, our families. Why are we not better prepared? What is with the taboo? Miscarriage is surely as old as time, but I say miscarriage and you fall silent. Why? There's a huge community of solo souls wandering around in darkness, suffering, hoping for anything to make sense, and everyone seems okay about that. Almost because you can't see it. It therefore didn't happen or wasn't real. Well, to me that feels odd. But, and it's a big but, what I found is there is a community for people like me, and it's that community I'm going to talk about now and explore a little. Like Jennie Agg. Jennie is a health writer, journalist and blogger. Her blog, the Uterus Monologues, was shortlisted for Blogger of the Year at the Medical Journalists Association Annual Awards in 2019. Reading Jennie's story made me feel less lonely. I called Jennie during lockdown. She is at home. We turned on our video to say hi, but turned it off again. It's sometimes easier to chat about this when you don't have to look at someone.
We started trying for a baby about, more than 4 years ago now, and took a little while to get pregnant the first time, but not beyond the realms of possibility. I think it was about 7 months, something like that, 7-8 months, maybe a bit longer. And that pregnancy ended in a miscarriage just before our 12-week scan. It was literally 3 days before the appointment or something. And it just wasn't something I was prepared for, and I kind of didn't realise how unprepared I was for it until it was I was in the middle of it, basically. I kind of thought, hang on, all the doctors are saying this is really common. It just happens. One of those things, really common, nothing to worry about, no reason to think it will happen again or that you can't have a baby. I thought, well, hang on, I've never heard friends talking about it, or, I've had friends tell me their labour stories, but I'd never heard anyone tell me about this. I now know that loads of people I know have had miscarriages. yeah, and that was very difficult to deal with, because I just didn't know what to do with myself. And I don't think I was prepared for the sort of emotions that came with it. I mean, the kind of physical process is pretty horrible in itself, but that sort of emotional fallout, I think, because I obviously knew what a miscarriage was, in the way I think lots of people do. You know, it's a word people know. What I don't think they know, unless it happens to them, is that actually it has that kind of grief impact that, yeah, although you might not have been very far along, that doesn't actually change how you feel about the pregnancy or the child that you thought you were going to have. And it was never something that had been spelled out to me or that I'd thought about before. So I started writing. I'm a journalist, so I wrote about that first miscarriage for the paper where I was working at the time. And around that time I got pregnant again, fairly soon after. It was only a couple of months, which was obviously very lucky. And unfortunately that ended in another miscarriage at about 8 weeks. Again, was so what they call a natural miscarriage. Started bleeding, the sort of classic thing, really. And I think it was at that point that I started the blog, but it was I kind of wrote a post in a bit of a haze, really, just, on a WordPress site that I set up anonymously, didn't plan to share it with anybody. I mean, why I didn't just write it in a Word document and save it on my computer, I don't know. That maybe is something about being a journalist that makes you think you have to publish everything.
It's in you, isn't it? It's just part of it. And I wasn't brave enough to publish publicly. So you took the next step, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny looking back, like trying to work out how it all because it all happened in very small stages. And then I think, I don't think I shared the kind of very first blog posts until slightly further on. And even then it was only sort of with kind of, a few people on my Instagram account, which wasn't, 50 friends who followed me on there kind of thing. And then gradually, I think I just got a bit braver. Around the time of the third miscarriage, I think that was kind of the tipping point, really, because then it really felt like this was something else. Like, I think maybe it's because they give you that sort of medical boundary. They say, after 3 we'll investigate for possible causes. And so then you think, oh, this might be something more serious, or not that 1 or 2 miscarriages isn't serious, but it feels like it's taken more seriously, I guess. And I suppose there's that idea that, oh, this might not just be bad luck. There might be something going on. Does this mean we can't have a baby at all? Does this mean it's going to be really difficult, more difficult than it's already been? And so from there, I think that was when I put my name to the blog. It just put it out there slightly, more widely. And I guess that meant everybody I knew.
And what was that like?
You know what? It was, in a way, it felt like a bit of a weight had been lifted. Obviously, I think we've been very lucky in people's responses to it, in that everybody's just been really kind and really supportive and wanted to tell me their own experiences, and that's really helpful. I mean, then, you find out that there are all these people in your life. I mean, literally every area of my life. So people I worked with, my family, my friends, people I went to school with who lost contact with, all that sort of stuff. Everybody. And that's really powerful, that feeling of, oh, this isn't just me, and kind of seeing the proof of that rather than just the stats that they give you on a leaflet when you leave an appointment, that sort of thing. And yeah, it just kind of grew from there, really. I don't think I've had any negative responses to it at all. I mean, not that I necessarily anticipated them, I guess, because it was all, it wasn't ever particularly well planned, the blog thing. But I guess there is that fear of, you do wonder whether people will just think, oh God, shut up about it, stop going on about it, we get it, kind of thing.
That's what's kind of took me so long to do the podcast, because I've still got the niggle, the kind of, if it's the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really hard thing to talk about, isn't it? Talk about or write about. And it makes you very vulnerable, I think, whether that's because there's still quite a lot that's not understood about it, I think. I think it's getting a bit better. I don't know whether that's just because I'm sort of tuned into people writing and talking about it now, but I do think there is a lot of misunderstanding around it, and that makes it puts a lot of pressure on you if you are talking about it or writing about it, because you feel almost like you've kind of got to make your case, if that makes sense.
No, it does, yeah. And you say that you've had 3 years of writing the blog. Is it your job?
No. It's very much a side project. So there's an overlap, and I've written a few pieces for newspapers and magazines, kind of personal pieces, and my work and the blog have kind of dovetailed, I guess. But I don't make any money from the blog. It's very much something I do because it feels, well, selfishly, it helps me sometimes to kind of make sense of what's going on, and that's been true throughout. So that's been true right from the beginning, when I was really kind of grief-stricken and sad, and then, going through testing and then being told there wasn't anything obvious that was causing a problem. And then, I had a whole year last year where we didn't try. We'd had a 4th miscarriage, and we're still being told, well, just keep going, keep trying. And actually it was, that's quite a hard thing, I think, when nobody's giving you any sort of anything different to try.
You're kind of stumbling around still, aren't you? No answers. And
well, I think because to the doctors, I think I guess to them it means there probably isn't anything wrong, but to you it becomes so hard to believe that next time will just be different and it'll be fine, that I think that's quite hard. It's that sort of feeling that there might be something wrong that they don't know how to diagnose yet.
And so you're pregnant now, which is lovely.
I'm relatively far along, actually. So, I've written about it a little bit on the blog.
How's that felt, seeing your pregnancy kind of get to where you are now?
It's very strange looking back. I think I'm still kind of processing it all, really. I mean, and obviously I kind of had this idea that if I got beyond 12 weeks, I'd feel a lot more relaxed. And that there's an element of that, but I definitely haven't completely relaxed, if that makes sense. But those first 12 weeks were really tough, like the hardest of all. I think in terms of like the mental load, I think it's got harder each time, which isn't to say that it's easy that, after one miscarriage at all. Like, I think but it definitely builds. You just expect to be bleeding every time you go to the loo and that sort of thing. I still haven't really shaken that, even now.
It was a lovely surprise to find out Jennie was expecting. I'd reached out to her months ago, before the bump. I will be sharing more on Jennie's stories and other women who've gone full term later in this podcast. Looking over Jennie's blog, I noticed her theme on Instagram. It's subtle and pretty for a dark, sad topic. If you go onto social media, you'll find so many feeds, especially Instagram feeds, full of quotes and photographs as people share their journey with the world. One caught my eye for its honesty, and I reached out to see if I could get the story behind the page. This is how I met Nicola, who runs the Miscarriage Afterlife Instagram page. I called Nicola one evening during lockdown. If I remember right, it was when we had the mini heatwave.
I've got a fan on next to me though, but I don't know if that sounds windy. If it does, I'll move it. Good, because I am melting.
So when you listen to this, picture me, 30-odd degrees outside, sitting in a room with the curtains and door closed, in my duvet den, with the barbecue happening next door.
I feel sometimes a bit of an imposter because I post all these things, how I'm feeling and how people should talk, but then I'm not. I mean, in my real life, I'm an open book. All my friends and family, they know what's happened to me and Dan, but you have all these friends on Facebook you worked with years ago, or people you went to school with you don't speak to. They'd have no idea, and that's the kind of people I did want to know, because I wanted to smash the kind of taboo thing of it, but haven't quite got there yet. So I'm in your boat, remaining anonymous.
Are you happy sharing your story?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was really, really struggling because it came out of nowhere for us, and I just didn't know what to do with all these emotions, and I just didn't know what was right, what was wrong, if it was natural, if it wasn't, if it was normal, if it wasn't. I had all these feelings kind of going around, and I don't write or anything like that, but I've got nobody in my life, no family, no friends, no colleagues that's ever been through any type of pregnancy or baby loss. So the only thing I had was Instagram or Google. And I just thought, if I just write everything down when it's happening, when it's raw, I can come back to this another day and I can look back and think, okay, yeah, I wasn't on my own doing that. So for me, it was a bit of a diary to kind of reflect on and know that it happened. Because I think sometimes when you go through something like this, it's quite easy to block it out and it's quite easy to kind of forget. And maybe that's why it does go into such a taboo, because a lot of people deal with it better not remembering, and that's fine. But for me, I couldn't deal with that. I struggled with the taboo of it, and I struggled that there wasn't a lot of information out there. So my first instinct was just to write things down and hopefully help other people, really.
Have you had people come in touch, and how many people have reached out to you in the situation you were in when you were feeling lonely and feeling like there's nothing out there?
So many. On the page, it's gaining around 100 followers a week, which I know doesn't sound a lot to some people, but to me, it's got more than my personal Instagram, so I feel quite cool. But yeah, every day I wake up to people just kind of saying, they'll send a picture from my grid and say, this have spoken to me. Other people, like I had someone message me yesterday, and she said that she was really, really struggling. She didn't have anyone to talk to. The only light at the end of the tunnel was a stranger on this Instagram. A lot of people grieve and cope differently. Some people are quiet and don't mention it, but I feel like that's normalised. It's normal to be quiet, and that's where I struggle because I can't. And yeah, I like to share, and that's what I struggle with, and that's why I was Googling and YouTubing and searching for all these quotes just to scram anything that could fit to how I was feeling, and kind of just put it all in one place. And I never looked back. The only thing I regret is I didn't start that page sooner.
My biggest bugbear is it's common, and then when I'm told it, when I was pitching it to people and when I was talking through it with kind of editors and other journalists, they were kind of, oh yeah, it's a really, really important story, but it's really, really common. And I was like, yeah, and it's not spoke of.
Yeah, it's just a statistic. Everyone knows it's common. Everyone knows the 1 in 4. But then if you said to that person who's telling you that, okay, so what happens? Why does someone have a miscarriage? Or what do they feel like? They wouldn't be able to answer you.
No.
They just know statistics, and that's where it's crazy, and I hated that. I hate it. It's common though, as if that's going to make me feel better.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, thanks.
So I'm just like everybody else, thank you. But it's still painful and horrible, and yeah. Were you aware that there was a community out there?
I had no idea. I thought that miscarriage and baby loss was for people who smoked through pregnancies or drank or ate pate 24/7, just didn't care about being pregnant. I didn't realise that I had no knowledge on IVF. All these women go through. I had no idea there was recurrent miscarriage clinics. I had absolutely no education, no knowledge. I was, for the whole, when this happened to me, 26 years of my life, totally naive. Absolutely. And it was only when I was going through it and I was on Instagram and I just put in #1 in 4, #miscarriage, and then I just saw thousands of pages, and it just opened up a whole new world. That's what helped me a lot, was relating, and because I think loss is just the most isolating experience I've ever been in my life, and just to know that you're not on your own. Because, people say, I'm here for you, mine, I'm here for you. It's so passing and it's so casual. It doesn't really mean a lot. But when you speak to women, or I spoke to men as well, like, how they feel, you're not alone. And it does happen to a lot of people, and I hate saying the statistic 1 in 4 and common, but really reach out and connecting with people. It was just a lifesaver for me. It was a real lifeline.
I'm hoping to catch up with Nicola later in this podcast, so watch this space for her story. There are also national charities offering support for people building online communities through message boards and on social media. You may remember I joined Ruth Bender-Atik one morning in episode 1 on this podcast. During that chat, we got onto this virtual community support. I talked to family and friends, and I talked to Lee. I don't think I've even joined a group. I've joined a Facebook page and watched other people talking, because I kind of like knowing that it's kind of normal, but I don't offer my own story. until like now.
Yep.
I'll do it in a podcast.
And that's absolutely fine. We know that people do that. I mean, we know the number of people who join our online forum and never ever post.
No, that's me.
And then maybe a year later we'll get an email saying, I've been a member of the forum for 2 years and I can't tell you how much it's helped me. Just reading other stories makes me realize I'm not alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it does. I think it's that's the bit that helps, because some of it is a bit alien and strange, and it is really isolating. Most of the time it's me in a toilet with a closed room. But it is really helpful, and it's really reassuring that it will go, even with all the restrictions of, fundraising and all the rest of it, that you feel like there is still that support there with the Miscarriage Association. That's really a nice thought to think.
I've talked about the forum, and I don't know whether you've seen it, but there are various discussion boards within the forum, and there are two on Trying Again. One is Trying Again for people who've had a baby, and one is Trying Again for people who haven't, and people have strong feelings about who they want to talk to. It's like, I remember when I was first trying for a baby and a bit of an elderly mother, and not getting pregnant, and then having to tell close friends that when we finally did conceive, because they were going through exactly the same thing. Mm-hmm. And I felt dreadful having to tell them that I'd succeeded. Yeah. And it turned out that so had they, and our kids were born 2 days apart. Oh. But what was extraordinary about it was this feeling of, you're breaking the rules. Yeah. It's going to be hurtful for someone else.
There are also artists turning their craft into this area with illustrations and visualised graphics, like Christine McDonough from Infertility Illustrated. I like her images. They're honest, but they still show this subject in such a creative way.
I think it was right around when I had my third miscarriage that I was just, I was just tired and frustrated. And I think that was when I started to realize that there was like a bigger world of people talking about this out there. Before I would see people who would post on message boards there about infertility. So that was kind of all I knew about it. But then, like I said, around my third miscarriage, I started like looking on, platforms like Instagram and stuff. And that was kind of the eye-opening moment for me of like, oh, there's like a whole world of support out here outside of message boards, I think when I first started fertility treatments, I was kind of naive, thinking, okay, you just, you do a round of this, maybe a couple rounds, and then you have success and it's great. Suddenly I would see on a message board someone talking about, doing it for the third time. And that was kind of that scary moment of like, oh my gosh, this could be a lot longer of a journey than I planned for.
And it was quite a long one, wasn't it, for you? Are you happy to share how long it's taken?
So it took us a solid 5 years to find success. But, and I was always kind of that like mindset of like, if I can just have one, I'll be great and happy. But it doesn't, I'm learning now that, even though we found success, like infertility doesn't leave you, because, I have friends who are having their second or third child, or surprised they're pregnant. And there's sort of that like reminder still always in the back of my head that no, you can't get pregnant naturally. If you want to have another kid, you have to go do IVF again,
You have your son, and that's lovely and really beautiful, but it has took 5 years, and that's not been an easy journey, and that's actually quite a powerful story to share.
Yeah, I'm always surprised, sometimes when I like post or share something that I'm like, I gotta be the only one, or I must be the only one feeling like this. And then you see so many other people who are like, who completely get it. And it's nice to know that like you're not alone in feeling a certain feeling, I thought like, oh, I'm so embarrassed. I've got to be the only one who has still held on to a positive pregnancy test. And then, you know, you see all these other people out there who've also held on to their positive pregnancy tests. And, you know, it kind of makes you feel like there's nothing wrong with you that you're doing this. You know, everyone kind of grieves and goes through this process differently. And it's nice that, like, you're not alone, that there's other people out there who understand and relate, and there's nothing wrong with it.
No, and I think the good thing about your illustrations that I've liked looking at them is that it is not something. It's that you almost have a dark humour with it, if you don't mind me saying. It's actually quite. Some of it's quite funny. Some of it is really quite funny.
Dark humor or cynicism.
Did you want it to be funny? Had you drawn it knowing it's going to be quite humorous, or is it just how you feel at the time when you're drawing them?
No, I think it's just how I like kind of perceive it at the time. And usually I'm like, you know, well, there's like something funny about this, or there's like a little like only people who would get it, people who understand it might find it funny. You know, some people might look at it who aren't necessarily in it and think like, oh, that's really sad. But, you know, there's that certain kind of perspective when you're in it where you're like, I completely get this. And so because you understand it, you get that funny, humorous element of it.
Like it's funny because it's true.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, for the most part, everything I draw is an experience that like I may have had. But that said, like, you know, I now that I've gotten to know more people in this community or something, I'll borrow, you know, like, oh, that's your experience is like really relatable. You know, like I might like draw something that I think people would relate to that I know someone who's had an experience with. But I would say like that's pretty rare that I do that. Most of the time it's something that like I can directly relate to.
What's been one of your favourite illustrations? Is there one that's leapt out to you, or one that you really love?
You know, you mentioned that in your email to me. I was looking through and I was like, I can't pick a favorite. I don't think I have a particular favorite. I think if I could choose like a theme, I like when I'm able to be a bit more, like I like when the picture's able to be a little more humorous than sad. You know, I like being able to show the funnier moments over the sad moments. Mm-hmm. But I don't think like I have a favorite. You know, I like the ones I did of like infertility being like you're on an island in a cave and you're just tallying up all the people you know that are pregnant or have kids. You know, I like there's a lot of ones that I like.
Finding this community of random people, all from different backgrounds, walks of life and countries, added to my curiosity of this entire subject. One thing we all seem to have in common, aside from our losses, is that we are all trying to do the same thing and raise awareness of this subject. It made me feel less lonely with my own navigation through the grief and acceptance of my losses. My only hope is that if you're going through it, this has helped you too. This episode was recorded by me in my spare room with a duvet for a sound barrier and a camp table for a desk. The song is Small Bump by Ed Sheeran. Huge thank yous to Jennie Agg from the Uterus Monologues, Ruth Bender-Atik, Director of the Miscarriage Association, Nicola from Miscarriage Afterlife, and Christine McDonough from Infertility Illustrated. If you liked this episode, please share it so we can help to open up this community a little bit more. And remember to subscribe to the podcast so that you don't miss an episode. You can wrap your fingers round my thumb and hold